Well, something else that we're going to be watching this week is actually sort of a dual event, if you will. On Wednesday, big tech CEOs are going to be testifying before a congressional committee, the Judiciary Committee, about antitrust concerns. And then on Thursday, we will get a number of large tech earnings, especially after Facebook just delayed its earnings report to after the close on Thursday. We are joined now by somebody to give us some perspective on that. That is Mark Zgutowicz. He is a Rosenblatt Securities analyst. He's joining us from Minneapolis. Mark, thank you for joining us. So,
thank you. Nice to be with you.
What are you expecting from these hearings? Do you think there's going to be any stock reaction? Because this is sort of an ongoing story, and we haven't yet seen any concrete action taken on the part of Congress that has really changed the business models for these companies.
Sure. So in terms of stock reaction, I'm not expecting any significant stock reaction. This has obviously been ongoing. We have, I think, since June of last year, the House Judiciary Committee took up this investigation. So there's been lots of data that's been acquired by them to review. We've also had the DOJ also open up an investigation on the same topic as it relates to Instagram and WhatsApp. So I think there's this hearings, given it's led by Joseph Nadler, obviously Democratic-led House, maybe give some balance to what we're seeing with the DOJ on the same type of investigation. There's, in terms of what could come from this, obviously there's PR damage here. I don't suspect anything meaningful, just over these, discussions that we can talk more in detail about it will be impactful to the stock.
Well, Mark, what would be impactful to the stock if any of the members of Congress who are going to be questioning should hit upon that? Because these are mammoth companies, and there's been no appetite. There might be an appetite to rein them in, but they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. I think what we're balancing here is, historically, the U.S. relative to the EU has been really more focused on consumer protectionism as opposed to business. So we're now starting to shift here a little bit more into the EU direction. However, I think there's still generally more balanced focus here in the U.S. on consumer protectionism. And if you think about the consumer in terms of the utility that they're gaining from these apps, particularly Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger, I'm not sure that breaking these companies up will necessarily help that utility. It's also helping a tremendous number of small businesses. Roughly 70-80% of Facebook's advertisers are small businesses that get plenty of utility from these apps. So, unless there's a conscious effort to completely move over into the business protectionism side, I'm not sure that disrupting these apps in terms of thinking about a breakup, which I think to your question would be the most impactful to the stock, at least near term, if such a discussion was to come up. However, I'm not quite sure a breakup would not only bring more utility to consumers. I think it wouldn't necessarily break up to relatively large monopolies. I mean, if you look at both Instagram with 1 billion users and Facebook Messenger with 1.6 billion, you break those two up. I'm not quite sure that necessarily lessens any monopolistic positioning here.
Mark, this is Dan Howley. I want to ask kind of what you see as the long-term threats to these companies, though. We had Microsoft obviously only wrap up their antitrust issues in the early 2000s, but as a result, they missed out on multiple growth offerings, whether that's search, mobile. They missed the boat on those entirely because they were too focused on antitrust. Now, do you think that if we look at Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, if they get wrapped up in these kinds of investigations and then the back and forth negotiations onto how they would remedy those issues, if they do come to any conclusions, the various investigations, could those companies then be put in jeopardy of missing out on the next wave of technology and growth?
Yeah, no, great question. Obviously at Microsoft, there was sort of forced policy change there. There hasn't yet been forced policy change here with with these companies, as we've talked about, a lot of these, monopolistic type concerns. So until there's, some type of forced policy change, I think that would certainly hinder, I think, both, as you discussed, following sort of some of these other secular growth opportunities. Clearly e-commerce is one, connected TV is another. So that would, in essence, maybe limit some of those opportunities. However, I'm not sure without those policy changes, this is more than, I would just say, a more of a distraction for these companies at the present time. So, I mean, if you look at Australia, I think they're the first that has actually attempted to force some policy change in actually, whether it goes through, we'll see, but in actually, forcing Google and Facebook to share their ad revenues with local media companies. So that is, in essence, a, sort of a forced policy change. I'm not sure that something like that would impact, future growth opportunities here for these companies. There's much bigger topics we could talk about as it relates to Google and shaking things up there with its ad tech, but
Mark,
I don't see anything near term here.
I just quickly want to get into a question about Facebook earnings too. How concerned are you about ad revenue there, particularly given, forget about antitrust for a minute, what about the boycott that we have seen from a number of advertisers, at least for the month of July? Again, just quickly talk to me about what kind of effect that's going to have.
Yeah, really minimal effect. As I mentioned, we look at, roughly 70-80% of Facebook's revenues that are coming from really direct response, small business advertisers, which is non-branding. I think in the pandemic, we've certainly seen a pause on branding, but I think we've also seen branders like the CPG space that have actually directed a lot of that spend into direct response. So I don't see really an impact at all. And I think to your point, this has really been a July pause. So unless we see that extended beyond July, I don't see it that impactful into the third quarter.
Gotcha. All right. We'll be watching those numbers after the close on Thursday, as I know you will. Mark Zgutowicz is Rosenblatt Securities analyst. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.